going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at ImacSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 193. We're about to tip off here. First game of the Eastern Conference Finals, couple minutes away here, Boston, Indiana. And, of course, that means we got the full in-depth conference finals preview. We'll be going over basically everything with those two series. But luckily for us, Kyle, power rankings do fall on this day. So first half baseball.
Yeah, we're going to have a pretty full episode here. It shouldn't be, crazy long episode. Obviously, if you're listening, you know how long it is. But we had our normal awards for the week, and then we get into our power rankings. Like Skyler said, that look at the conference finals as well as that second round recap. And then we're going to look at some of the, maybe the top 5 players left in the NBA playoffs, because there's some subject up to be debated there, as well as looking at the 4 teams left in their title odds ranked 1 through 4. With that being said, though, we always got to do our opener. I'll let Skyler go first for his opener here, because mine segues well into the
all right, next. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about the new video game, EA Sports, College Football 25. We've been waiting 10 plus years for it. We were predicting cover athletes, and now we know the 3 main guys are going to be Michigan running back Dylan Edwards, Colorado two-way superstar Travis Hunter, and Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. Not only did we get that cool cover, we got a pretty long trailer compared to what we've gotten in the past, just screenshots of mascots, just showing off all the different unique traditions that are going to be in the game. That's 130 plus different schools represented, which is awesome. But some other things we found out today I wanted to add on. The game's going to run faster, as in gameplay speed compared to Madden. Team builder and creation will be in the game, so that's awesome. Stadiums, schools, high school, jerseys. Many new animations, including helmets being knocked off and one-handed catches. We found out today Road to Glory will focus a lot on NIL and becoming a superstar. And Dynasty will focus on the difference between recruiting 5 stars and lower guys in the portal. So I'm super hyped. Lots of different options for us. And, of course, Ultimate Team will be in there, too. We'll get the urge at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of different things to do in that game. I saw a tweet over the past week that was talking about, I'm going to be so nervous for that first play, your first game in after not playing. You might just have to run a dive or something like that to get the juices flowing or something.
Custom playbooks, by the way.
There's much debate on what's the first play you call in NCAA, but that's still a couple months away.
Yeah.
Something that isn't a couple months away, and it's been going on this past few weeks, is just the absolute terror that Aaron Judge and Gunnar Henderson have been putting on the pitchers in the MLB right now. Gunnar Henderson leads the MLB in home runs with 16. Aaron Judge not far behind him, I believe, at 13 now. But what these two dudes are doing at the plate is absolutely ridiculous. They're hitting the ball so damn hard, and seeing guys locked in the way that they are, it's really fun to see. It's something that you kind of just have to turn on your TV every single time that you see they're hitting, because they have the potential to go yard every single time. So it's fun watching those two dudes play, and I'm sure, they're both going to have amazing seasons once it's all said and done. Moving on, though, to our player, pitcher, and rookie of the week. Skyler, who is your player of the week in baseball this past week?
Although Judge and Gunnar Henderson have been tearing it up, absolutely, especially Judge for hitting 550 this week. I went in a different direction. Maybe it's because I'm wearing the Red Sox shirt today, but 6 homers in 6 days for Rafi Devers is pretty ridiculous. Something I haven't seen in a while. His 9 RBIs were the second most in baseball this week.
Yeah, I would say this week was probably the most contested week that we could have for a player of the week. There was, you click on OPS, he was the leader of the OPS for the week, and you see Aaron Judge is almost 2-dotting it for the week, and then you see right below him, Gunnar Henderson's kind of at 1.5. You sort home runs, and you see Rafael Devers hit 6, and these other two dudes hit 4 and 3. So I went with Devers as well, too, because I do think it's pretty special to hit 6 homers within the week. He only had 7 hits, 6 of which, of course, were over the fence, but I think that alone is something that's got to get in the player of the week. That's why I did want to talk about Judge and Henderson in the opener, because they've been tearing it up as well, too. But Rafael Devers kind of under the radar, had a 6 homer week, I would say. I don't really think that's getting the national news that we usually see when something like that happens, because I believe those were 6 straight games that he homered it.
Yeah.
So he's been tearing it up for the Red Sox, who might be featured in our power rankings in a couple of minutes. Moving on to pitcher of the week, Skyler, who'd you go with?
Yeah, talk about a memorable performance here. How about Paul Skeens? Almost a redemption start here. Second career start, also against the Cubs. He went 6 innings, no hit, 11 strikeouts. Again, that's his second career start. Just ridiculous from him. I felt like I had to give him the edge here. Almost a Tyler Gilbert Award winner, but not quite. Also, I wanted to shout out Yu Darvish. Completely shut down Atlanta on Sunday Night Baseball with 9 strikeouts.
Yeah, Paul Skeens has got to be the guy. The thing about his stuff, and I think the kind of the craziest thing is that like he had good stuff on whatever day it was, Friday
Yeah.
afternoon, morning, whatever time slot you're in. But it wasn't like his best stuff. Like he was still struggling to put away hitters a little bit, into the point where it's like not like a struggle, but he wasn't as swiftly as what he's been sometimes in college and in the minors. Maybe that's just getting to the MLB and how it's going to be, but he was dominant without having his A+ stuff, so to say. So we're seeing the beginning of that guy. One other dude I do want to give a shout out to, and it's good to see him pitching well, is Alek Manoah. He had an absolute dominant start over the past week. 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, allowed 0 runs, 1 walk, and 7 Ks. For a guy that's gotten a lot of shit over the past year and a half, it's good to see him, lock down and kind of, come back to those dudes that are talking shit about him. Rookie of the week, Skyler. Who'd you go with here?
Yeah, so this one is going to be Paul Skeens again, of course, but I wanted to shout out Luis Eel, 14 strikeouts against the White Sox. Another guy who it's hard to quietly dominate when you're playing for the Yankees, but it's happening. Not a lot of guys are talking about Luis Eel, and just another ridiculously electric game from him.
Yeah, those two dudes are definitely great people. I mean, obviously, you probably got to go Skeens as the total award winner. Eel was ridiculously dominant as well, too. That's one of the dudes that, if we go back and look to my overreactions the first week of baseball, I said Louis Eel is here, and he's here. Like, this guy's got some ridiculous stuff. I think his ERA is at a 2.39 or something like that, and he's striking out like 10 or 11 dudes per 9 innings. Another dude I do want to shout out, it seems like he's pretty reoccurring in this Rookie of the Week. He showed Amanaga for 7 shutty this past week. 4 hits, 1 walk, no runs, of course, and 7 strikeouts. He went into the appearance with an ERA at 0.96, and somehow he lowered it to 0.84. Now, total onto the season, he has 9 games started and 5 earned runs allowed. He's been ridiculously dominant for somebody coming into the league in general, but overseas, and he's shown that his stuff, while it's kind of unorthodox, is that have the 95+ fastball. It seems like everybody does. He is one of the best pitchers in the big leagues, and that's no secret now at this point. All right. Anyways, moving on from our awards and on to our top 15 power rankings. Last time we did this was 2 weeks ago. That's kind of been the recurring theme for our power rankings so far this season. Anybody off the list that you wanted to give a shout out to, or anybody that wasn't on the list last time that didn't make it this time?
Detroit's going to drop out of my list, and I think we both assume at some point Arizona is going to get back on track. They're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as that. One team that I had my rankings last time that didn't make it this time was the Nationals. They were at 15, so it's not like it's a crazy fall off. That could be 17 or 18, whatever it is. We just don't go down that far. So that's the only team that falls off. And the teams that are just off, I would say, would be the Tampa Bay Rays, who are now above 500 despite their negative run differential, and the San Francisco Giants, who kind of are starting a bit of that youth movement that their parents have been wanting so badly for the past couple of years, and have played some good baseball as of late. I think winning 4 in a row. So those two teams there. But what about number 15, Skyler? Who do you choose here?
We'll start off with Boston. Down 1 spot from last week. They were 14, right at 500. And they haven't done anything crazy all year, but they've given up the 5th least amount of runs in the AL this year. The pitching staff has been awesome, keeping them alive, barely.
Yeah, my number 15 team has by far the worst record out of any team on this list. It's the Houston Astros at 21 and 27, coming up from unranked. I don't think they might have been on my first rankings, but they haven't been on any since. And they're starting to play better ball. They went 9-5 over the past 2 weeks, and in that time span, they won 2 out of 3 in Detroit. They swept Oakland in a 4-game series, and then took 2 out of 3 from Milwaukee this past weekend. They're starting to get it into gear. I think their bullpen's really starting to lock it down, whether that's Abreu, Presley, or Hader, plus a couple other dudes that have been really good for them as well too. Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve have been so good all season, but now they're starting to see guys like Bregman pick it up a little bit as well too. Starting pitching's been better. Christian Javier just got back healthy. Houston Astros probably will remain on this list for the entirety rest of the year, I'd imagine, because once they get going, they tend to really turn it on. Number 14.
I don't quite have the Astros here yet. I'm sure a good whooping of the A's helped the lineup for sure more than anything. But I do have their rivals here, the Rangers, falling down from 6 of last week. Not a great week. Not as bad as another team I'll talk about here pretty soon, Minnesota, but it's not too far off. They got swept by Colorado. They couldn't win a series at home against the Angels. It's been rough for Texas.
Yeah, I think that's a theme with a lot of teams that we're going to see in between like 10 to 15, where a lot of teams had rough weeks. And then there's a few teams that had really good weeks and boosted them way up. But my number 14 team, I went with the Red Sox, the team that you're wearing on your chest right now. They went 5-8 over the past week or past 2 weeks, and they only won one series, and that was a series against Washington. So I did drop them down 2 spots. I don't want to overreact or anything like that, so I'm keeping them at 14. Only down 2 spots. Number 13.
13, I got the Twins dropping down a bunch of spots from 8 from last week. This is a really weird one. At one point, they had the longest winning streak in baseball. Now they've lost 7 in a row. They got Washington, Texas, and Kansas City coming up. They're going to try to redeem themselves, but that is a tough stretch for sure.
Yeah. My number 13 team, moving up 1 spot from our last rankings 2 weeks ago, is the San Diego Padres, who actually had a pretty damn good 2-week stretch despite getting swept by the Rockies at home. They went 8-5. They had a 2 out of 3 in Chicago, 2 out of 3 versus the Dodgers, and then 3 out of 4 against Atlanta in the weird wraparound series that we saw. And just yesterday, Padres are weird, man. Like, if you didn't have that 3-game sweep from Colorado in there, then they could be a top 10 team in this list. But that 3-game sweep alone kind of knocks you down a little bit and kind of stalls you from having, besides that, really damn good 2-week stretch. Number 12.
All right, number 12, I am going with the unranked Tampa Bay Rays from 2 weeks ago. They've recently surpassed Boston, a team that we both think are a little underrated, so that's a pretty big deal. It doesn't help that a lot of guys are massively slumping and they lost their entire rotation, but they're finally over 500. I think it's time to give them their due, I guess.
Yeah. My number 12 team is down 4 spots from our last rankings. It's the reigning champs, Texas Rangers. They went 5-8 over the past 2 weeks. They only won one series in that time span, and it was 3 out of 4 in Oakland literally 2 weeks ago now at this point. Since then, they've lost 3 straight series. It's the Colorado, Cleveland, and LA. That's the Angels, not the Dodgers. So a couple pretty bad series losses in there, and that Colorado series was a sweep as well, too. I think the Rangers will be fine. Their just offense went cold for a little 2-week stretch, and I think that's something that can ruin you in October, but we're not in October yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. So only at 500 right now, but with how the division is, the leader's only 4 games over, so it's pretty, still open for them, of course. And it's only May. Number 11.
I got the Mariners staying at number 11 here because they've been extremely average at everything except for starting pitching. I expect a Royals-type rise in the next couple of weeks, but they're still going to be the lowest-ranked division leader for me right now.
My number 11 team moved down 4 spots as well, just like the Rangers. It's the Minnesota Twins. They went 5-9 over the past 2 weeks. They had a very interesting 2 weeks because the first week was pretty good. They took 3 out of 4 from Seattle. They took 2 out of 3 in Toronto. And then they got swept by the Yankees. And then they got swept by Cleveland. And then they lost yesterday to the Nationals. But I do believe they're winning right now. Regardless, on a 7-game losing streak after winning 12, 13 games a couple weeks ago, maybe a month now at this point. And we always so one thing that always kind of comes up in baseball the quarter way is that you really understand your identity, quarter of the way into the season, whether, you're a good team, whether you're a bad team, whether you fall somewhere in the middle. And for the Twins, with how streaky they've been, it's really tough to gauge how good this team is because you see the potential. You see, if all things are firing, this is a team that can legitimately win a playoff series or two. But with how they were playing this past week, they look like they wanted to make the playoffs. So the Twins still in my rankings, not as far down as Skyler, but still a really rough 2 weeks for them, going 5-9. Number 10.
10, I got the Cubbies, also staying put, same spot as 2 weeks ago. They just lost series to Atlanta and Pittsburgh. Now they have Atlanta again, so things could get messy for them. But they're only a game and a half back of Milwaukee, so anything can happen in the Central still, per usual, right?
Yeah. The Cubs are also my number 10 team. They move up 1 spot from our last rankings. They went 5-8 over the past 2 weeks, so it's not like they played good, but it's just, I think, a whole bunch of other teams that kind of played worse than them. They only won 1 series, and that was 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh. That included the Skeens debut. However, they also lost a series at home against Pittsburgh that next week, so I guess that kind of cancels out. Regardless, the Cubbies have still been pretty solid in the early part of the season. They're starting to get some guys healthy, starting to bring some guys up as well, too. So I think this, a couple games over 500 mark is kind of where I'd expect the Cubs to stay for the immediate future. Number 9.
Again, it's Milwaukee. The Brewers stay at 9. This is the beginning of the teams that the analytics like so far. They're still 7 games over 500, a really good run differential, and they're going to be right next to the Cubs all season, I think.
Yeah. I was on the Brewers at 9, so we're pretty spot on there. Up 1 spot from our last rankings. They went 7-7 over the past 2 weeks. They took 3 out of 4 versus St. Louis and 2 out of 3 from Pittsburgh. Played scratch baseball. And when you have the divisional lead and the rest of the teams in your division aren't playing that good, you can play scratch baseball and be okay. And that's where the Brewers are. Number 8.
Number 8, I got the Padres jumping up from 13 here, slowly creeping back up into the race. They now hold the 3rd wild card spot in the NL. They've scored the most runs in the National League for teams not leading the division. I like that stat because especially when you're playing a lot of games against the Dodgers, I don't expect them to be at the top of every extended statistic. So good for San Diego. Keep it rolling. I like what they're doing right now.
That was a good stat there.
Yeah.
Because the Diamondbacks are 1 run behind them. However, they have way better pitching than the Diamondbacks right now, so that's why the Diamondbacks are on it. My number 8 team is the Mariners. They went 7-7 over the past 2 weeks, but I did move them up 5 spots because I just think in total they've been playing a way better brand of baseball than they were in the first month of the season. They took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City, 2 out of 3 from Oakland, and then they just took the first of 4 in New York on Monday, and they're up 2-0 right now against Clark Schmidt and the Yanks tonight. I like this team, and I've been talking about them, pretty much the entire offseason. Talked about them quite a bit in the early part of the season, too. I expect them to win the division. That's currently where they're at right now. However, they got to play a bit better ball if they want to win the damn thing because, Texas and Houston they're going to heat up at some point. So you got it as well, too. Number 7.
How about the Royals jumping up from 12, finally getting my respect, Kyle? I got you. The 5th team in baseball to reach 30 wins this year. They've run 4 in a row now after sweeping the A's, whether it's Lugo, Reagans, Singer, even Alec Marsh down the stretch. Starting pitching has been great, and just a really good stretch from Kansas City.
Yeah, I have Kansas City at 7 as well, too. They went 10-4 the past 2 weeks, and they're showing now that it wasn't, first month fluke where, you play good ball. They played damn good in the month of May as well, too. They took 2 out of 3 from Milwaukee, 3 out of 4 in Los Angeles against the Angels, and then swept the A's over this past weekend. It's just such a, unique and exciting team from players that are not that exciting. I don't know. It's really weird because their rotation is probably the star of the team, I'd say, and they have so many different like. It's not that 100 miles from the right side, 100 miles from the right side. Like you're not facing the same shit every single day. You're facing Cole Reagans, who's got some of the hardest stuff from the left side that we've seen in the MLB this year. Then you face Seth Lugo, who's throwing the kitchen sink at you, and then you're facing Brady Singer, who's kind of good. Like he does all these little things that make him good. And they got Michael Wacha, who's a good bet, and like you said, Alec Martian in there as well too. The bullpen is decently solid, and they have an MVP caliber player in Bobby Witt, and that's kind of sometimes what these teams need to, I would say, put them over the next step, because that's obviously what an MVP type player would do. But like Bobby Witt making it so this team can really function really well together because he's a centerpiece of it all. And Salvador Perez is playing out of his mind. And I feel bad for taking the under because I really did love what this team did in the offseason. I just didn't think it'd be enough to make this kind of drastic change, and they proved me wrong, that's for sure. Moving on to the top 6.
Yeah, Atlanta Braves down 2 spots from 4 for playing 500 ball, and we know they're better than that, so they get knocked down a little bit. Swept by the Dodgers, and they lost a series to San Diego. It's tough, of course, but they're not done. They're going to hit a stretch here in the summer like they always do, and do maybe a reverse Phillies on us. Be the best team of the second half.
Yeah, as we get to the top 6 too, something I noticed is that these top 6 teams, I wouldn't say you can put them anywhere within the top 6, but it's a definitive top 6 in my mind right now. That's no shame to the Royals, because the Royals have the record of a top 6 team, but the Braves, Orioles, Guardians, Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies are all like the teams that you need to have 1 through 6 is what I'm trying to say. But the Braves are my number 6 team as well too. They moved down 1 spot from our last rankings, went 7-5, 2 out of 3 in New York against the Mets. They took a small 2-game sweep against Boston and took 2 out of 3 against Chicago last week. This team really hasn't gotten going yet. And I know Spencer Strider's, of course, out for the season, but you look at their lineup, Acuna's not really hitting. Albies isn't putting on any crazy show. Olsen's starting to heat up a little bit. Ozuna's obviously been going the entire season, but Austin Riley's hurt. And they're still finding a way to win ball games. And I think also looking at their starting rotation, they now, you take out Spencer Strider, but you added in Chris Sale, and Chris Sale's been like the best he's ever been in his career right now. Like he's on a ridiculous run. I think he has over 70 strikeouts now and like 55 innings or something like that, with an ERA like right at 2. So he's been ridiculously dominant for them. And I think the Braves will be just quite all right. I don't think we're seeing, something to worry about, because the Braves fans are so used to being, the best team record-wise in the league for, the last like 3 or 4 years. So 10 games over 500 wouldn't be panic mode for anybody else, but I think the Braves fans might be feeling that, and I'm saying do not feel that, because you're going to be just all right. Number 5.
Number 5, I got the Guardians up 2 spots from 7. Man, did they beat the crap out of Minnesota and Texas. Winners of 4 in a row now. And I think this is exactly the tone setter we needed to be convinced they can sustain this. Lockdown bullpen with timely hitting reminds me a lot of 90-win A's teams.
Yeah. I also have the Guardians at number 5. They moved down 1 spot from my last rankings, where I had about 4, 8-5 over the past week, 2 out of 3 in Texas and 3 out of 3. This clean sweep of Minnesota over the weekend. I feel bad because last week I think you and me both picked Minnesota to win the division, and now I think they're like 6.5 games ahead of them right now, and Kansas City's in between that as well too. So maybe we're just overlooking Kansas City, but regardless, Cleveland's been playing really damn good ball. They, win every single game pretty much the exact same way, where they are going to small ball you to death. They're going to hit a big homer, and they're going to, pitch well through all 9 innings and make it tough on you. So they're a tough team to beat. They're a very tough regular season team to beat as well too, where they're just not going to give up any outs on you. And, the grinding aspect of those games in May, June, July, August makes it really tough for some of those teams that you're coming to face. But the Guardians are good, man. And shout out Steven Vogt, because, he's got a ton of stuff to do with that team. Number 4.
Number 4 is going to be the Yankees, up one spot. They've been one of the hottest teams in baseball with 8 out of 10 wins, 33 wins so far, and the number 1 ERA in baseball without Garrett Cole. Crazy.
Yeah. I also have the Yankees at number 4. Moving up 2 spots from our last rankings. I think if you really, really wanted to, you could make a case for them at number 1, just because of how good they've been in these past 2 weeks, how good Soto and Judge specifically have been, where it's just like, you can't do anything to those two. Like, they're going to kill you regardless. And playing at home like how they have been over this past week, it's really tough to knock them at all. But I do keep them at the 4th spot. Regardless, 10-3 over the past 2 weeks. 2 out of 3 from Houston, 2 out of 3 in Tampa, but 3 out of 3 in Minnesota. Second best record in MLB in general, 33-16. Bullpen's great. Starting pitching is great. Like you said, even without Garrett Cole, the lineup's been good as well too, and that doesn't even include Jason Dominguez or Everson Pereira or Gleyber Torres, who's been shit all year. So it's the Yankees are playing well, man. And I saw something comparing is like Yankee fans comparing this team to the 2022 team that started off really, really good and then fizzled out kind of as the end of the season happened. And they're like, oh, I really hope it doesn't end that way again. But when you look at it, like, these guys that are on their team are really not outperforming any of their expectations. And I think that's kind of what makes you say, like, oh, yeah, they can sustain it because, some dude, Matt Carpenter, doesn't have a 1.2 OPS on their team right now. Like, it's all guys doing what they should be doing, and some dudes even underperforming. So I like what the Yankees are doing. And this team looks as good as any team in the big leagues right now. Number 3.
Number 3, Baltimore's going to keep their spot here. It's not the best stretch, but they're still a couple games over 500 over the past 2 weeks. They won the series against Seattle, Arizona, Cincy, and, of course, the Yankees. That's why they get the nod here.
Yeah, the Orioles are in my number 3 spot as well, too. That's the same spot that I had them last time. They went 6-5 over the last 2 weeks. That includes series wins over Arizona and Seattle. They played a decently rough schedule, so I'm not freaking out with a 6-5 instead of a 10-3 or something like that. And I know if there's Yankee fans listening, they're going to be pissed at us for ranking the Orioles above the Yankees, despite the Yankees having a 2-game lead in the division right now. I don't give a fuck. The Orioles are better. Mm-hmm. So, that's just how it's going to be. They're injured as well, too. They're getting guys back, and they're going to get better as long as the season goes on because the Orioles are young, and they have ridiculous players at every single position. So, Baltimore stays at number 3. Number 2,
I got the Phillies also staying put here. Not enough to move them, so I think we have the same top 4 then here, I assume. Another great stretch from Philly. 8 out of their last 10. The pitching staff has been so dominant that the lineup that consistently puts up runs can end the game really early on. They've like an average of 8 runs per game these past 2 weeks, and it's been pretty nuts for Philly. Yeah, I also have the Phillies at number 2. Same spot that I had them last time. They have the best record in baseball at 34-14, the only win percentage in the 700s, and they're at 708 right now. 10-3 over the last 2 weeks. They took 3 out of 4 in New York against the Mets. They swept the Washington Nationals, who we know are a tough team. They've just consistently been ridiculously good. I think the biggest point against the Phillies right now is that they haven't played any team over 500, or they're 1-2 or something like that against teams over 500, and just haven't played the best teams. But they're doing exactly what they should be doing against teams that are shit. And I think a lot of teams that, teams fans that are going after them for not having that good record against 500 teams or not playing enough, like, your team's not winning 70% of their games against these bad teams. That's exactly why, your team isn't winning the division or whatever. Like, that's how teams win the division. That's how teams win 110 games, is they do really good against the teams that are shit. They play 500 baseball or so against teams that are good. And that's just how it goes. Because at the end of the day, you just got to be one game better. You don't have to destroy these teams. It's got to be one game better. And the Phillies are a whole lot of games better than a whole lot of teams right now, sitting at 34-14. Number 1. It's the Dodgers. It seems like only the Padres have given them any real trouble over the past month, or even the entire season, because they lost 2 out of 3 there and then went on another streak of their own. 4 in a row, 7 out of 10. They still have 33 wins. That's the second most. And I don't see anyone stopping the Dodgers anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. The Dodgers number one for me as well too. 10-4 with the last 2 weeks, 2 out of 3 in San Francisco is one of the big series wins over that time span. Just feels like I don't want to say the Globetrotters when you watch them, but it feels like they're just so flashy and they're just putting on such a show every single time that they play that it feels that same kind of vibe where you're just watching something that you know can turn crazy and you see something you've never seen before each night that you watch that team play. Because one night it's Tyler Glasnow shoving for you. Fucking every night it's Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts hitting. But then you had Freddie hitting the grand slam last night. You had Will Smith hitting homers. You have Teoscar Hernandez who has like 11 homers and 30 plus RBIs. Like this team's damn good. They're number one for a reason. They're hated by so many, but I absolutely love this team, and they're just so fun to watch. And when you take the subjectivity out of it and just watch them objectively, they play such a beautiful brand of baseball, man. And it's really fun to watch. The Dodgers number one.
Yep.
Moving on to the NBA playoff second round recap. We had 4 series that, of course, ended at this point as we get on to the conference finals. Just a little heads up in that game one that's going on. Pacers Celtics right now, 25-20 Celtics with 3:27 to go in the first quarter. So kind of, exactly how we expected it to go, most likely, as far as the first, 9 minutes into the game. But we'll look at the 4 series that ended. And the first one that ended was Boston over the Cavs in 5. I don't have much to say about this. This is kind of just exactly how I expected it to go.
Yeah, Cavs battling through a lot of major injuries. Donovan Mitchell specifically it's just not enough to get the job done for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. A lot of people ridiculing the Celtics as well, too, for not facing anybody. That's what you do when you're the 1 seed. You don't face the best teams, and that's exactly why you want the 1 seed. Anyways, moving on to the next series that ended, which was the Mavericks and Thunder series. Kind of a shock to hear Mavericks win in 6. Ian didn't want to describe it as a choke by the Thunder in Game 6. It's a fucking choke from the Thunder in Game 6. They're up by 15 plus and then ended up losing because Shea fouled PJ Washington with, the second left to go or whatever. It ends up in 2 out of 3 game-winning free throws to give the Mavericks a 117-116 victory on Saturday nights. I'd say this is a shocker, but I'm not 100. I don't want to say shocker, even though I already did say it. But I didn't think it would go this way, but I'm not 100% surprised with it.
Yeah, of course. When you're playing a guy like Luka, anything can happen. And we'll get more into the Dallas talk once we start predicting that series against Minnesota. But it seemed like Dallas gave OKC so many opportunities to come back in the series, and they just couldn't get it done. They were too young. They weren't hitting their shots. And turns out one guy from Arizona State can't stop Luka.
That's true. And I think it's kind of, a testament to the Thunder being so young that they just don't have. I know Shea, averaged 30 plus points.
Yeah, he was great.
The NBA this season, he averaged 30 points 5 years ago, maybe even the year before that. But the Mavs have been there, and while they haven't gone past the Western Conference Finals, Kyrie's won before. Like, he's been there. Luka's hit big shots plenty of times in his career. These games don't mean as much to Luka and Kyrie, and I think that's the biggest thing when it comes down to it is that you have to take the holy shit, it's, for the playoffs, we had a chance to go to the conference finals out of it, because if you think about that the whole time, you're not going to be as good. So Mavericks played really good, and that, of course, sets up the Western Conference Finals, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But first, we got to go on to the second Eastern Conference series that ended Pacers versus Knicks. One team won every single game except for Game 7.
Yeah.
Knicks fans want to blame it on Brunson breaking his hand. I don't care. Shit happens. Pacers win 130-109 to give them the 4-3 series victory, Skyler. I got to give you your props because you predicted this. I think you probably even predicted the damn injuries as well, too. So I don't even know how the fuck you did that, but you tend to do that. So I'll give you your props for that. But the Pacers, Skyler, what about this?
Yeah. Just a really well coached team. They were the number one defensive team in the East this season, and again, I'll get more into the specifics when we break down the series. But when you play guys that many minutes a night, you're bound to break. And that's exactly what happened to the Knicks. They didn't have enough energy left. They tried to play OG, even though he was clearly not a factor. And when you're playing 5-on-4, Indiana, you have a massive advantage here. That's exactly what happened. They played to their strengths. They forced the ball to OG and made him take him out of the game completely.
Yeah, the Pacers played well. They, I think we even talked about this last week as well too. The longer the series goes on, the worse it is for the Knicks because they're just not healthy, and they needed to. If they wanted any chance to, go to the finals or do anything, they needed to put away the Pacers quickly. And they started off well winning those first two games, but once you couldn't win one in Indiana, they kind of, I would say, put the writing on the wall for you, but you could kind of see it coming once it got to that point. Especially sucks for them once they were up 3-2 and couldn't close it out. Last series that we had though was the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. We all know what happened in that one. The Timberwolves went 98-90. They came back from down 20, ended up flipping the score at one point to 30 points the opposite way, being up 10, ended up winning by 8. 7-game series as well too, taking down the reigning champs in the Denver Nuggets. How about this series, man? This was fun.
Yeah, that was incredible. It seemed like another team, right? Minnesota seemed like they might have been done after losing 2 in a row at home after such a great start. And we didn't really know what was coming next. But what happened next was Minnesota made Denver play their style of basketball. They slowed it way down. And again, a similar story, right? Denver couldn't stay completely healthy. Michael Porter was too inconsistent. Aaron Gordon wasn't getting open, and a guy like Peyton Watson, who you want to bring in for some defense and some speed, just didn't get any minutes in this series because they needed scoring because Minnesota was just unstoppable in this one. Shout out to Ant.
Yeah, the Timberwolves, man. I don't want to talk about the recipe quite yet because I want to get into our conference finals prediction, but they showed why they're a championship contender this series is what I'd say. And they're a fun team to watch. Which I guess segues us perfectly into our conference finals predictions. We're going to get a new champion, which is awesome. We're either going to see 4 different things. We're either going to see Tatum win a ring. We are either going to see Ant win a ring. We're going to see Luka win a ring, or we're going to see Halliburton win a ring, which
it's good for basketball, man.
Yeah, it's great for basketball, of course. I think the only repeat champion, at least out of the big players, would be Kyrie. Drew Holiday, I guess, has a ring,
Yeah.
but regardless, not any like superstar or anything like that besides Kyrie that has a ring at this point. So it's really cool to see that. It's good for the NBA, I'd say. So we'll just go into Pacers, Celtics. What do you think happens in this series?
I got Boston in 6 games here. Don't get me wrong. I think Porzingis missing up to 3 games is massive for Indiana. And by game 4 last round against the Knicks, they had Brunson in so much trouble. But Boston's a different animal. They're moving on. Jaylen Brown wins the series MVP. He's been shooting at a ridiculously efficient clip here. And even if Indiana plays great defense, I think they're going to lose a couple that they believe they should win, and that's just going to tear their spirits. And they're not going to force a 7 like they did last round.
Yeah, I have the Celtics in 5. Maybe it's a bit quick, but the Celtics are just so much better than any team the Pacers have faced so far. They faced the Giannis-less Bucks. They faced the Julius Randle-less Knicks. And, again, going back to what I was saying, there's nothing they can do about that. They beat the team that they beat because they were in the spot they were in. But the Celtics are not going through that. They're rested. They're healthy. I know KP is going to be out for a couple of games, but I expect him to be back once it comes to closeout time. And by that time, I think the Celtics should be, having the upper hand regardless. So I think it's a relatively quick series. I think the Pacers take 1 at home, but the Celtics win in 5. T-Wolf?
Yeah.
Not the Magic. Oh, my God. I almost said the Magic. The Mavericks. That series starts tomorrow. That's going to be a fun series. What do you think, Phil? What do you think?
I got this one going to 7 games, and I'm taking the T-Wolves here. You hinted at this earlier, but I'm sure a lot of other people will say, nice, Edwards gets to play Dallas. They're going to smoke them just like that. Perfect. But I think this is just Luka letting us know what to expect of him now. That playoff run 2 years ago wasn't just a fluke. They're ready for the moment. However, Minnesota now gets home court advantage now that they're locked in after the Denver series. This time around with the depth pieces, Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Alexander Walker, they've all been great in the playoffs. But we all know if they win this series, the MVP is going to be going to Ant Edwards because that guy's been ridiculous.
Yeah. I do think something interesting here. I know the Mavs, better team than the Thunder or whatever because they won the series. But I think this is going to be a way better series since the Mavericks won, because I think you look at the Timberwolves, combination of being efficient on offense, having big-time scorers, having guys that can make the three ball that aren't your main player, and playing a shit ton of defense would have just overwhelmed the crap out of the Thunder. And they wouldn't have had the ability to do anything. I think we could have even seen a sweep if that series had happened. Now, we have some big-time shot makers in the Mavericks. We have guys that have played against some of the best defenses in the world or ever, considering Kyrie and playing against some of those Warriors teams. It's going to be a fun series. Luka and Kyrie are going to get their own. I think there's going to be a couple games where, either one of them takes over and either it's a game winner or shot slate to, give the Mavericks a win. But the better team is the Timberwolves, and that's throughout. The top 6, 7 guys on the Timberwolves are all really damn good, and they all play the system so perfectly, man, where it's 3 and D and Rudy. Like, it's just they're so good on defense. They shoot the crap out of the ball. They rebound. They have a ridiculous amount of effort. And I think it's going to be too much to handle for the Mavericks. So I say T-Wolves in 6. I think they get it done in Dallas for that game 6.
Damn.
Moving on, though. Little fun segment here. I don't think we've ever even done anything like this, but with the 4 teams left in the playoffs, it's always talking about who's the best player left in the playoffs. Who's that big-time player that's going to make the best plays? And while maybe the best players in the NBA, like an Embiid or a Giannis or a Jokic, are no longer in it, that elevates those guys who, maybe weren't going to be in that list now. So we have the top 5. I don't have any honorable mentions. Skyler, do you have anybody that you want to talk about?
Yeah, but I'll spin it into my 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's your 5?
So we'll start off with Tyrese Halliburton. And I was really going back and forth on this 5 spot because at first I was like, well, did Indiana even deserve a player in the top 5 here? They're clearly the worst team left, you would think, odds-wise. But after watching a quarter, I'm glad I included him. He's off to a great start. He's definitely taken a less aggressive approach to the second half of the season, but 19 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds in the playoffs. At the end of the day, I'm going to value the leader of this team higher than the defense of a Gobert or how fluky Kyrie and Cat have been. I even added maybe even Derek White gets on this list, but we got to watch and find out because he was so good in the first round, obviously. But I'm going with Halliburton.
Yeah. I went with Kyrie at 5, and I think the offensive aggressiveness is my main point against Halliburton. I want my best player shooting the damn ball. I don't care if it's, inefficient or something like that. If you're the best player on your team, you need to be able to make shots. You need to be able to take shots. And that's some of the things that I think Halliburton hasn't been able to do as well in the first couple of rounds of the series. And I think Kyrie, of course, has had that ability throughout his career and in the playoffs to hit big shots, whether it's averaging the most points or something like that. Like, I need a guy who I can trust in the last 5 minutes of the game taking a shot, and I think I take Kyrie 10 times out of 10 over Halliburton. That's no shot on him. Kyrie's got the resume to put him on this list, and I think I'd be disrespecting him if I didn't put him at 5. Number 4.
Number 4, this one, on the other hand, very easy for me to pick. I'm going Jaylen Brown of the Celtics, 23-7 this postseason. He's shooting 55% of the field. Very efficient, even 37 from 3, you'll take. He's just not driving as much as Tatum because his free throws are down a lot in the playoffs, but they haven't been in an end game situation like that in a while, maybe one of those Cavs games. So hopefully we find out tonight if he's ready for the moment because I believe he's a top 4 player left.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have Jaylen Brown at number 4 as well, too. I think this perfectly describes the Tatum and Brown duo where they may not be the best players in the playoffs, but they're, the two of them combined are ridiculously good, and they're kind of like a yin and yang a little bit. We'll get into Tatum in a few minutes, but Jaylen Brown's a ridiculously good player. All the you can't go left shit. I don't give a fuck. He's good on both ends. He can do everything. There isn't a flaw in his game, except for maybe completely going left. I don't know. Jaylen Brown, really good player. Number 4, number 3.
Yeah, here's Jason Tatum right next to him. Like you said, it's a 24 and 10 average in the playoffs for him. He makes a lot of free throws, and that can make up for his drop in field goal percentage this year. He also plays much better defense than Brown. So even though most of the time I see them as that equal, not a 1 and 2, I am going to rank Tatum higher right now, even though maybe regular season they were flipped.
I'm on that same page. I put Tatum at 3, Brown at 4. I think that's always kind of been the narrative that Tatum is a better player than Jaylen Brown. However, they kind of do go as a 1A, 1B sometimes. I think if it was down to it at the end of a game, who's taking the shot for you, it really just matters who's having a better game in that situation. It's not like, okay, Jason's taking the last shot or Jalen's taking the last shot. It's whatever the fuel is, or maybe Derek White's taking the last shot. Who knows? But Jason Tatum's a really damn good player. I slightly have him better than Jaylen Brown just because he's a bigger dude. Like you said, can play the defense a little bit better. Rebounds really damn well. I think it's a pretty underrated side about him. Pretty good playmaker. Of course, a big-time shot maker as well, too. Number 2.
Maybe a controversial one, especially right now, but I am going to go with Edwards in the 2 spot. His 29 playoff points per game is the highest out of anyone left, and his energy is pretty unmatched right now. He has the chance to come into next season as an MVP favorite, which is crazy because of this crazy run and also a future Olympics appearance after the playoffs. The reason he's not number 1 is probably what you said earlier about taking the last shot. He was 6 for 24 last game. Maybe that's just one bad game and he's going to go take his team to the finals and we'll forget all about it. But it's still engraved in my mind a little bit. Is this guy going to take the last shot?
Yeah, I do think because of how that Timberwolves team is constructed that he is going to take the last shot because he kind of has to. Like, unless Cat is, on one or something like that, it's always going to be Ant with the ball in his hands to end the game. We did actually see Michael Conley have the ball in his hands, but he passed it, so it wasn't really that same idea. Regardless, I also have Ant at the 2 spot. He is so damn good. He's so fun to watch. He's very electric. He's got the vibe that you need to be an NBA champion, where it's I'm gonna talk shit whenever. It doesn't matter if I'm up. It doesn't matter when I'm down. And when you see somebody talking shit when they're down, that kind of scares you, man. Like, because people shouldn't be doing that. People only talk shit when they're up. But that the shit he was saying when they were down 3-2, and I think it was talking to like the Nuggets ushers or some shit like that, and he's like, "I'll be back. Like, I'll see you motherfuckers for Game 7." That is something that we only see once in a generation, and he's got that ability to him. And I think that's something that we contrast with Luka because we don't really see Luka talking shit when he's down. There's going to be a lot of trash talking in this series. I'm so looking forward to it because the rankings are going to show we have the 2 best players left in the playoffs going at it.
Yeah.
Number 1.
And that's Luka Doncic of Dallas. 27 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists in the playoffs so far on an injured leg for most of it, too. Just a straight-up killer. This is the guy you want with the ball in his hands at the end of the game. He's proved that multiple times over multiple seasons, and I'll be rooting for him, to be honest with you. Not that I don't like Minnesota. I'm just rooting for the legacy, I guess, of all these guys.
Yeah, it's Luka's number 1. I've always been on the train of Luka should have an MVP by now. I thought he probably should even got it this past year, considering how good they were. It feels, oh man, I don't want to say this. I've said it like 4 times, but it feels like the beginning of a next great rivalry within the West. We've saw, in the final sense of it, it was LeBron versus Curry. We saw, KD be included into that. There's all these different players that have kind of had these historic rivalries, and this feels like the next one because these 2 teams have the ability to get back here. It's just taking down, Shai and Jokic and some of these other dudes. But this series is alpha versus alpha, and these two dudes are clearly the best players on the team. Clearly, the guy who wants the ball at the end of the game. Luka has Kyrie, so he has that second guy, but it's all Ant for the Timberwolves. Like, we're not going to see some guy ISO and win the game or something like that unless it's him. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I don't have much to say about Luka because I've already said it in the past years. Like, yeah, he's the whole package as an offensive player. Maybe the defense is bad, but he avoids the high guys on defense. And for offense, he's going to expose your every little weakness. So Luka's number one. Moving on to the title odds. Should be relatively straightforward here. I don't think we need to put too much time into it. I have Indiana at number 4. I know it's kind of what we've talked about this entire episode. So
yes,
sorry for the foreshadowing. Number 3, I have Dallas. I picked Minnesota to win the series, so of course I'm going to have Dallas at 3. I think it's kind of what you have as well too. And then Dallas 2, not Dallas, Minnesota 2, and Boston 1. I assume you kind of have the same thing.
I have the same exact thing here. I think the Indiana-Boston is the toughest matchup defensively for Indiana here, even though they've been so good. They don't really have a score to keep up with that. And obviously Minnesota has all the pieces to try to counter what Luka's going to be doing. So obviously that's going to be the most competitive series we all predict. That's why they're 2-3.
So it's going to be fun. Next couple of weeks of all this stuff going on. But you're looking past that, Skyler. Tell me about this NBA mock draft you got.
So I've been hearing a lot of hate. The draft doesn't matter. The players are bad. It might be true, but I thought we still should go through the top 5 picks with the new order and just talk a little bit, because obviously not a lot of people are going to be watching my guy, Zachary Richaillard from France. I have him projected to go number 1 to the Hawks, the 6'9" forward. He just had 29 in his French league playoff game. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but a lot of scouts were there. It's the same league that Wemby had his playoff games broadcasted. It's probably the best scorer right away in the class that we know of. And Atlanta has guards. So, and obviously anyone could trade this pick if they're like, no, we'll take a guaranteed starter. That's fine. Number 2 is the Wizards. It's the most up in the air pick here. Luckily for them, Alexander Sarr falls to 7-1 power forward, also from France. Teams are going to be valuing defense in this draft, I believe, because not a lot of top scoring options. Like I said, we don't really know if Sarr could shoot yet, but this is your annual pick of, hey, we're either getting Bosch or James Wiseman for that athletic freak guy. So someone's going to take a shot on him. Number 3 is the Rockets. They get this pick via Brooklyn James Harden trade. Good for them because they don't have a whole lot of needs. I haven't taken Donovan Clingan, 7'3" center from UConn. He blocked 3 shots per game at UConn last year. Houston doesn't have a whole lot of scoring needs right now. They built the foundation. So bring in a guy who's had some Gobert comparisons. Number 4 is the Spurs. An interesting one here. They already have Wembanyama there. So let's get him a playmaker. How about Stephon Castle, also from the Huskies, the 6'7" point guard. Back-to-back Huskies here. Stephon Castle battled with injuries all season long, but he came back from March Madness. They couldn't have done it without his 21 points against Alabama. So get Wemby a playmaker. And to finish it off, the Detroit Pistons falling to 5. Detroit's pretty fucked no matter what they do here. So I have them trying to go safe. How about Nikola Topic? 6'6" point guard from Serbia. You might be thinking, well, how is this guy safer? But historically, the college shooters will take a little longer. Maybe this guy will translate better playing in the same league that Luka played in before. He averaged 18 and 7. So hopefully these guys can reach their full potentials. Obviously, some great defenders in this class, some ridiculous size. That's what this league's all about. You want a big shot blocker, a big playmaker, a big scorer. Everything's got to be big. So that's why all these guys are pretty big in the top 5. And that's my mock draft so far. Probably won't go down this way, but hey, these are 5 guys I've watched.
Moving on to our bets and bold predictions. Over the past week, I tried something new. It didn't really work out. The WNBA picks. I took the over in a Liberty versus Fever game on Thursday. I believe I was like 5 points off, so it wasn't that crazy of a pick, but I did miss the over there. Skyler had OKC winning the next two and winning the series in six. They lost the next two, unfortunately, so that one's wrong. This week, I have the Celtics versus Wolves as my finals. It's not a crazy prediction, of course. I think that if you were to parlay those two things, it probably comes out like minus 150, minus 130. So a standard, pick, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm going back to baseball this week. How about the Pirates over San Francisco on Wednesday? That's going to be Jared Jones, who's been on fire against Blake Snell, who's not. He's back from the rehab start, so I assume he doesn't throw many pitches, and that's a pretty big advantage for Pittsburgh here at home.
Yeah. Moving on to our bold predictions. Last week, I had the Sparks over the Atlanta Dream.
Fever Dream.
Oh, Fever's in the Indiana.
Oh.
Maybe it's the Dream. But they lost, unfortunately. That was Cameron Brink's NBA debut. She did all right, but not enough to get the victory. Of course, Skyler Pacers in 7. It's a good on Skyler there. This week, there isn't any odds on this yet because the game's odds aren't really out yet either. But I have Skeens on his start. Paul Skeens on his start on Thursday against the Giants. That's a day game. I have him going 6+ with 10+ Ks in that one. So I'd imagine that's probably like plus 200, 300, maybe even less, but still would be plus odds for sure.
All right. My game, like I said, back-to-back baseball here for the bold prediction. I'm going to go with the Nationals to beat the Mariners on Friday at home. This one's Mackenzie Gore against George Kirby. Great pitching matchup, of course. So maybe I can get some better odds on a Kirby start for him to get the loss, but should be really low scoring, and Washington's trying to get back on track. So why not?
Yeah. That's going to do it, though. For episode 193 kind of talked about a little bit of everything except for the NFL, I guess, because we did get NCAA.
Yeah.
AA football in there. But we'll probably not have anything NFL next week, but we'll have more baseball. We'll have more basketball. Probably some more NCAA news as well, too. Skyler, you got any closing remarks?
Shout out Devontae Parker. He has retired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Retirement, Devontae Parker.
Aaron Rodgers threw today. That was pretty cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Looking like a 40-year-old man off an Achilles tear.
That's exactly how I would not want to look. Anyways, we'll see you guys episode 194 next week for some more.
Yes, sir.